Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 93% rate. Trevor Zegras.
And they score on the lacrosse move!
Jake Gensel.
Gensel banks it towards the goal, he scores!
Cale Makar.
Cale Makar, he scores!
Stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you're a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey.
My goodness gracious me!
Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow at College Hockey.
Welcome to College Hockey Today. Jayson Hajdu from College Hockey Inc., joined by Brad Schlossman of the Grand Forks Herald. After a couple of stops and starts today, we are finally recording. We had a packed rundown yesterday when we settled on what we were going to talk about, and then today all heck broke loose. Big news day today. We will preview all of the conference championships ahead of us, but first, lots of news to get to. And I guess we'll start off with what is probably the most seismic news so far this year. This afternoon, Minnesota and Bob Motzko announcing that they have mutually parted ways. Your reaction to that news?
Yeah, it's a lot of trains of thought here. Number one, Bob had a really nice run there until this year. And I think it kind and you know what, this was a historically bad year for Minnesota. Minnesota's worst season in 54 years. And sometimes when you have a historically bad season like that, that can preempt some change. But you also think, and you're like, man, they were 3 minutes from a national title game, championship three years ago. They had won the Big Ten a lot. Coming into this season, the program had been in such a good spot that, it just goes to show that there's not the patience for down years as there have been in the past, I feel. I look around at the coaches around the country, especially the big name blue blood programs, and all of them have changed hands in the last since 2018. That's when David Carl took over at Denver in 2018. And then you get even into like after the pandemic, CC made a change. You got BC, BU, Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Dakota, now Minnesota. It's like Notre Dame. It's like, the turnover. Scott Sandelin's kind of becoming a unicorn at Minnesota Duluth. We just don't see the Jackie Parkers and the Red Berensons and these coaches that have just really defined the sport at these major institutions that have been there for so long, and just their tenures are so long. We just don't see that anymore. It feels like those are kind of some of my initial thoughts. That, man, we've seen a lot of coaching changes in a lot of the big time programs.
8 years at Minnesota for Bob Motzko, 3-time Big Ten Coach of the Year. He won the Spencer Penrose in 2023, and as you mentioned, was an eyelash away from winning a national title. And who knows if today's news even happens, if those 3 minutes plus the first shift overtime turn out differently. They didn't. I'm sure there's some division among the Minnesota fan base about whether or not this was the right move. I hope it doesn't get lost in the shuffle that off the ice. I don't think we can forget where the program was when Bob Motzko took over in terms of fan engagement, in terms of alumni engagement, and I think he deserves a ton of credit for getting those two things back on track.
Yeah, I think there were times early in his tenure where Mariucci was very quiet and very empty, and just kind of seeing the atmosphere of some of those Big Ten title games that were so good. It kind of reminded when you and I were going back to Mariucci back in the heyday, and how raucous that place could be, and we started seeing that again, and that's just really good news for college hockey when we can see packed arenas and passionate fans and I think that's a huge part of the sport. So it was great to see Mariucci packed again and have all those fans engaged.
I don't think we'd like to do a ton of speculation on this show, but by the time we record next week, there's a non-zero chance we'll know his replacement. I base that on no inside information, just purely knowing how big schools can operate. Your thoughts on some of the names being thrown around out there? Some of them obvious, maybe some of them not so much.
Yeah, I think it's obviously going to be a highly coveted job. It's one of those really massive jobs that just how many times has that job been open in the last 50 years? Like, it just does not. These jobs just do not come open very often. It will be highly coveted. I think one of the names that's being thrown out there, Garrett Raboyne at Augustana, the reason that it brings back my memory is because I was covering the Sioux Falls Regional when we kind of found out that Bob was going to take over for Minnesota. And now here, in all likelihood, I'm going to be going back down to Sioux Falls, and there's going to be another guy who is in that city who's going to have that same speculation going on. It's almost like going to be deja vu. We don't know what exactly is going to happen, but I'm definitely, it definitely feels like 2018, I think it was.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. So, well, we'll keep an eye on that the next week. The other news today, the Hobey Baker Award folks released their top 10 finalists. I'll read them off here quickly, and then I'll get your reaction on the group of 10. Trey Augustine, Michigan State. James Higgins, Boston College. TJ Hughes, Michigan. Gavin McKenna, Penn State. Max Plant, Minnesota Duluth. Eric Polkamp, Denver. Hayden Stavroff, Dartmouth. Charlie Stramel, Michigan State. Felix Trudeau, Sacred Heart. And Ethan Wittenbach, the nation's leading scorer from Quinnipiac. Your thoughts on the top 10?
Number one, very forward heavy. One defenseman, one goaltender in the mix there. So I don't think that's a huge shock. You kind of wondered if like a Cole Hudson could work his way in there somehow on the back end. Could a Josh Kotai work his way in there as a goaltender? Of course, he's had such a terrific year. Could Michael Hrabal work his way in there? It feels like the Hrabal train started too late almost for him to get in the mix. It had his run started a month earlier. He might have had enough time to build up the what he's done. I would certainly expect Hrabal to be a Richter finalist, and obviously Augustine will. So I don't think there's any major shock in here. Pretty good group. My other reaction is I don't know who's going to win yet. Like, I don't know who the top three are. This is wide open right now. This might be one of the wildest votes that they've had where, you're probably not, going to see a lot of separation, from 1 to 8. This year might be the closest voting from like 1 to 8 that we've ever had in my time doing this. I don't remember one where you're just like, yeah, I don't know how I would rank these right now. And I have a vote this year, so I'm going to have to do a lot of deep dives here. I've obviously watched a lot of these guys, and I know what their games are like, all deserving candidates. And it's going to be a very interesting conference call in a couple weeks.
It's also signing season right now. We've had about 7 early departures since we last recorded, by my count. 3 of them from BU, and possibly a 4th with Cole Iserman coming soon. That's been reported by a few outlets. And we had some senior signings as well, including a couple of UDFAs, Vinny Borghese, Jack Anderson, Brandon Burr with Toronto. Any of those earlies in particular jump out at you?
I think a lot of
we got
these.
Tyson Gross signed with his Newtown Flames.
He did. A lot of these signings were the free agent ones were ones we did cover in our show, which I was like, yes, we got that name out there. The Jack Andersons, the Tyson Grosses. We did not have Gustav Stemberg in there. That was an interesting one. He's a big physical player for Bowling Green. He took a lot of penalties for Bowling Green. He was, he gave director of officiating Marco Hunt a lot of work on his plate. So he might be a guy that's better suited for the pro game, so it'll be interesting to see how Gustav Stemberg does there. I think some of the other ones we've seen, the BU guys were pretty much expected. Noah Powell, maybe a little unexpected at Arizona State. He's had an interesting career trajectory. He had, 40 goals in the USHL. He started at Ohio State, went back to the CHL, went to ASU, had some ups and downs at ASU. Now he's signed with Philly. So, that one maybe was not on my radar, but the others not super shocked.
Should note too that Cole Hudson will make his NHL debut tonight being Wednesday. 11th player from last year's Frozen Four to reach the NHL already. Still TBD on Sasha Boisvert's debut at last check. That was still up in the air. Okay, let's talk college hockey playoffs. Pretty wild weekend last weekend. Quite a few number one seeds being eliminated. We'll go through each conference.
Well, I think one of the big themes this weekend were top seeds falling out, and a lot of them falling out at home. We saw Michigan State, North Dakota, Providence, Wisconsin, Quinnipiac. A lot of Quinnipiac was a series, too. We'll talk about that one, I'm sure, in a little bit, but it was interesting. I don't think home ice has been as big of an advantage this season as a whole as you would traditionally expect. And, that showed up a little bit this weekend in the conference tournament. So we've got some more action coming up, some home championships coming up. Might not mean as much as we think it does.
Okay, let's start in Atlantic hockey, where our championship is set for Saturday night. It'll be regular season champion and top seed Bentley hosting number 2 seed Sacred Heart. We wondered a couple of weeks ago if we might see a little bit of chaos in this tournament. It was largely chalk along the way, and here we are with 1 versus 2 in the championship.
Yeah, should be a really good game. Bentley's hosting this one. Last year, Bentley went on the road and had to win in a hostile environment. This year, Bentley gets to play it at home. I think it'll be an excellent game. Both teams, as you said, had to work for it. Holy Cross, Bentley series was an overtime game in game 1. We had the 3-game series with Robert Morris. Sure fought all the way till the end. Really good season for Robert Morris. I think they tied for 3rd in the league in the standings, pushed Sacred Heart to the limit in that game. Terrific season. Charlie Schenkel ended up being a great find in net for the Colonials there. But yeah, Bentley, Sacred Heart. This is the team that won the league against the team that I think was picked in most of the polls to win the league. Wasn't Sacred Heart generally favored, if my memory serves me correct? Should be an excellent game. Winner, as you said, off to the NCAA tournament. And, I think outside of Clarkson winning ECAC, the winner of this game will be the 16 and will almost certainly get Michigan first round. And if it's Bentley, there's a lot of guys on that team that were part of pushing Boston College to the limit last year in that game. So they have some of the experience there. I'm sure Sacred Heart would like to repeat last year's conference tournament where the road team knocks off the home team in the championship game.
One individual matchup to maybe focus on, Bentley's Michael Messick has a goal in 8 straight games. That's the longest goal streak in the country this year. At the other end, after missing really 3 months with injury, Ajit Pindara, the Sacred Heart goalie, he's played 8 games since returning. He's 7-1 with a .948 save percentage, and he was really good in their series last week. And that's a pretty cool matchup to watch this weekend.
Yeah, that should be a big one. And, as we just mentioned, Felix Trudeau, Hobey Baker finalist. He's a goal scorer. He's a big-time goal scorer and a difference maker for Sacred Heart. A Bentley team that traditionally has defended quite well under Andy Jones is going to have its hands full with the Sacred Heart team this weekend.
In the Big Ten, it will be Ohio State at Michigan on Saturday. Ohio State knocked off top-seeded Michigan State at Munn 3-2 in overtime. Felix Caron with the overtime game winner in that one. Michigan took care of Penn State. That was a 5-2 game. Michigan scoring their 5 goals at 4-on-4, 5-on-3, shorthanded, and an empty net, and an even strength goal, a full strength goal in there as well. So doing it a variety of ways. Buckeyes versus Wolverines on Saturday.
And this is going to be one a lot of people have their eyes on just because Ohio State can throw a wrench into the NCAA tournament at large picture. If Ohio State wins this game, there goes another at large spot because they will take that. Michigan is, what? We had talked a couple weeks ago. Michigan has not won the Big Ten regular season title. It seems that Michigan's won a lot of the postseason titles. Like, this is kind of their time here in the conference tournament, and we'll see if Michigan can add to that. Right now, the Wolverines are just rolling. Ohio State has played pretty well down the stretch and throughout this whole year. I think when you look at Ohio State's record, you see the Buckeyes are like 6 games under 500. I think what's hidden in that is that Ohio State is 1-8 in 3-on-3 overtime. So if you look at the regulation record, Ohio State's much closer to 500, maybe a little bit above. It's really the 3-on-3 overtime that the Buckeyes struggled with. And hey, guess what? Our first 5-on-5 overtime, what happens? Ohio State fans loving 5-on-5 overtime. They were done with 3-on-3. Big game here for Ohio State. Wisconsin is one of those teams that's sitting there that's probably in. The Badgers are just hoping for anything but complete chaos this weekend. And Ohio State winning this game would be the first domino of complete chaos. So we will see.
Yeah, to your point, Michigan looking for its 4th Big Ten playoff championship. Ohio State looking for number 1 in program history. In the CCHA, a rematch of last year's Mason Cup championship game. Number 1 Minnesota State will host number 2 St. Thomas. That game is on Friday. Again, 1 versus 2 squaring off here, much like Atlantic hockey.
Yep, we've got 2 goaltenders who are playing really well. And, it just feels like this has low scoring game written all over it. And that's traditionally the way some of these CCHA teams play, although St. Thomas can get up and down a little bit more. St. Thomas packs a pretty good offensive punch. It is in Mankato where the Mavs have had some really good fortune in CCHA championship games over the years. This is, despite where you see them in the MPI, this is essentially an NCAA playing game. The winner is in, the loser is out. Then you have Augustana sitting there at 16. Augustana is watching. You may say, oh, they're 16, they're out. Well, they're not, because 13, 14, and 15 all play this weekend. And they can all dip below Augustana with losses. So Augie is sitting here with a real legit chance of making the NCAA tournament. Not only that, if Augie gets in, almost certainly I think Augie is going to be playing in its hometown in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So with a Mike Richter candidate goaltender at the back end, these are going to be some scary matchups. Whoever gets in this from this league, just because they can defend well, they have elite goaltending. St. Thomas may be a little different because they score a little bit more and pack a punch with Lucas Wallen, who could have been one of those Hobey finalists. He's had just a great year. Lucas Van Vliet's had a great rookie year over there. They've got some pretty good depth, but Minnesota State just seems to keep getting it done. And boy, you just do not expect a game like the Mavericks had against Michigan Tech, just putting up goal after goal right away. And that game got out of hand early. Tech had such a great season. That was not what I had envisioned there. But credit Minnesota State for getting that done, and St. Thomas for grinding out a 2-1 win against Augie in a really hard-fought game.
Yeah, Alex Gaffney with the game winner for St. Thomas midway through the third. All of the scoring came in the third period in that game. The Mavs, they're looking for their fourth Mason Cup in 5 years. Focus to ECAC hockey. Semifinals will go on Friday in Lake Placid. Clarkson versus Dartmouth, Princeton versus Cornell. It's 8 versus 2, 4 versus 3. You touched on it earlier. The big story here, I think, Clarkson sweeping Quinnipiac at Quinnipiac, 3-0, 4-3. Bit of a wild one on Saturday. Your reaction to that outcome?
Yeah, pretty surprising. I watched most of Friday's game. I mean, the second period, Clarkson was just all over Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac's been so consistently good this season that's just something I hadn't seen a whole lot of, that opponents able to do that. Clarkson full value for that win. It's a pretty deep team, I feel. Like Botterill up front is a really good player and a guy you've got to watch. But I feel like you just don't know who's able to score from that team. And, Clarkson wins the first game. Second game, they're down by 2 goals in the third period, and they're on the PK. That game looks over. All of a sudden, Clarkson scores shorthanded goal, another shorthanded goal, kill off the penalty, and then score again. That game turned in a hurry. Quinnipiac now, a week off to sit and try to rebound from that game. But Clarkson, impressive performance. I thought really I was impressed with a lot of the teams that got through. Princeton sweeping Union. I did not see that coming. Union's been pretty good this year. A lot of different offensive threats on that Union team. Dartmouth getting by Colgate. That one I wasn't too shocked by. And then Cornell Harvard. That one had to go 3 games. Really good battle there. Cornell ends up getting through to set that up. The 2 teams, the bubble teams are watching in this one. Clarkson and Princeton. Cornell and Dartmouth are in the tournament. Clarkson and Princeton both need to win to get in. Again, Augustana, Wisconsin, some of these, Hockey East, our bubble watchers, they do not want Clarkson or Princeton winning this tournament. So we will see what happens. Last year, remember, Cornell made that amazing run and ended up winning ECAC and getting in, and then ended up stunning Michigan State first round. So we'll see if anyone can repeat that.
Let's rewind a little bit to Clarkson, because this is a player we haven't talked about, I don't think, on this show yet this year. But goalie Shane Soderwall, who's won 6 of his last 7 starts and was really good, obviously, against Quinnipiac. He played at Curry College last year. Curry College is a Division III school. He was the National Player of the Year in Division III. And he's just been a really stabilizing force for Clarkson this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's got one of the most interesting, paths. He was a guy who played, so in junior hockey in the U.S., you've got the USHL. That's the top junior league. Then you've got the North American League. I would say everyone on USHL rosters end up D1. North American League, maybe the top half do. And then some of the others end up at D3. And then there's this league called the NA3HL. You just do not see D1 players from the NA3. Shane Soderwall played in the NA3. He ends up going then after that to the NAHL and playing up in Anchorage. As you said, then he goes to Curry for 2 years. Now he's at Clarkson. A crazy path to ECAC and Clarkson hockey for Shane Soderwall, but he has made it there. He's playing great, and he had to be good this weekend.
He's given up more than 3 goals in a game once since Thanksgiving, so very consistent, very stabilizing. There was a game last year in the Division III quarterfinals. He made 98 saves in a 4 overtime game. I believe that tied the NCAA record for all divisions, but a 98 save performance. So he's big game tested, regardless of level. He's shown the big game, showed it again last weekend. The big game will not faze him. So keep an eye on Clarkson in what should be a fascinating ECAC semifinal round. All right, Hockey East semifinals again Friday. Merrimack versus UMass, that's 8 versus 2, and BC versus Yukon, that's 4 versus 3. What's your take on the rest of this bracket?
Going to be some great hockey to watch because these teams are all on the bubble.
Yep.
The one team that is in the tournament is Providence, and Providence is out. Merrimack beat Providence this weekend. So you have 4 teams, and they're all going into this tournament with needing to win, especially Friday semifinals. I think the teams that lose that very well there's a great chance they're out. So if you want to watch some just outstanding semifinal games, those should be really good games. Merrimack's playing really well. They've got some high profile players, as you've seen by some of the year-end awards. Merrimack's playing against one of the hottest players in the country in Michael Hrabel. I think that's one of the biggest stories of the second half of the year, the way he has just dominated, taken over. That could be one of the imagine getting a number 1 seed and you're playing Michael Hrabel first round. Like, congrats on the 1 seed, but and that team isn't even guaranteed to get in. UConn with a nice win over BU to advance. I thought they played really well. That game against BC is going to be outstanding. I'm looking forward to watching these 2 semifinals because so much is on the line for all 4 teams.
Couple notes on each from last weekend. James Hagens pushed his point streak to 13 games. One more, and he'll have the longest in the NCAA all season long. UConn's 5-3 win over BU. Freshman defenseman Anthony Alain Samaki got the game winner in the 3rd period. That was his first career goal. Yeah. And then you mentioned the UMass game. I thought their best players were their best players. Michael Hrabel stopped 30 of 31. 3-point games for Jack Musa and Vaclav Nestrasil. And then in the Merrimack game, Trevor Hoskin came through with the overtime game winner. He's the Niagara transfer. Justin Gill left at one point with an injury that looked pretty bad, but he did return. I haven't seen anything on his status this week. I don't know if you have.
I have not, no.
So we'll keep an eye on that one too. Yep. So lots of bubble implications in that one. Providence, as you mentioned, they're 7. They're locked in. They're good to go, even though they're not playing this weekend. We'll finish with the NCHC. Minnesota Duluth, the 4 seed, will take on Denver at Magnus. They're the 2 seed. That championship game is Saturday, and both teams looking for their 4th Frozen Faceoff banner.
Yeah, we had Minnesota Duluth, very impressive going into North Dakota and winning that semifinal 5-1. Excluding an empty net goal game in November, North Dakota hadn't lost by more than a goal since October. So that you just had not seen. Max Plant, very good again. The biggest storyline for me for Minnesota Duluth was Adam Guyan. He was phenomenal in that game.
Really
and
good.
if he plays at that level, things can happen for Minnesota Duluth. So that was a big development. And then the goaltender he's going to face, Johnny Hicks, he still has not lost a college hockey game. He was the backup until mid to late January. He comes in and he has not lost a game. So he has been on an absolute roll. Another wonderful Western Michigan Denver game. Last year they played in the NCHC championship, double overtime. They played in the NCAA Frozen Four, double overtime. Now they play in the NCHC semifinal, only a single overtime, but still, they've had some marvelous games. Now we'll see Denver play, Denver host Minnesota Duluth in that game on Saturday night. Both teams safely into the tournament. Both teams are going to be number 2 seeds. So they're playing for a championship and a trophy. They are not playing to get into the tournament. Both are safely in. We know where Denver's going to be. They'll be in Loveland. Duluth, we'll see.
We've seen a lot of really great home ice atmospheres in the playoffs so far. Cornell was really great. The key with Duluth, I thought, was they just never gave North Dakota a chance to get the crowd into it. They jumped out to that quick 2-0 lead, and there was never really a chance where you thought this is in danger of getting away from them. Even though North Dakota did get one from Dylan James eventually, it just never unfolded in the way North Dakota would have liked.
For sure. And that's a building where if things get going the wrong way, they can go in the wrong way in a hurry. And I think the biggest thing, as you said, Duluth scored 2 minutes into the game. They had the lead. They scored again, had a 2-goal lead. The only time you were thinking, okay, this could, when Dylan James scores to make it 3-1 with 18 minutes to go in the third, you start thinking, if North Dakota gets another one here, the building is
which we've seen a lot this year.
We have. And Duluth's been on the wrong end of it twice this year. Duluth had a pair of 2-goal leads against North Dakota this year that they lost in the third period. This time, Duluth gets the answer goal. So that was pretty big for the Bulldogs. We forgot to mention, Duluth split up the plant line. They didn't split up the plants, but they've had Jayson Hajdu on the wing of the plants for almost the whole year. There was a game in January at Denver where Denver had last line change, and they moved Hajdu off that line. It lasted 10 minutes. Then he was back on. This time, they did get the scoring depth they want. They left him on the different line the whole game. Will they do that in the championship game? Because they don't have last change again. Will they do that in the NCAA tournament? We'll see. The one thing Scott Sandelin said, if it's not working, we can always just move them right back. So I don't think he thinks it's a huge deal breaking them up, because he knows if he doesn't like a couple shifts, boom, they're right back together. But that is going to be a decision Duluth has to make. In the NCAA tournament, you have the longer TV timeouts. Sometimes I feel that favors teams that have the really, really good top lines that they can roll out probably more minutes because they have more rest time. And we will see what the Bulldogs end up doing.
The Bulldogs will face a Denver team that's won 8 games in a row. It's just like it's March. It's Denver's time to get hot and play their best hockey of the year behind Johnny Hicks this time.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, they're playing really well, and we'll see how that one plays out.
Okay, you have an unusual weekend. You do not have a game to cover, so I'm curious. You've already banged out a handful of stories earlier in the week. What do you have working on, or what do you have in the hopper, I should say, the next week or so?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I really want to watch some of these games. I'll probably be doing my bracketology on Saturday night.
Yep.
A lot of award stories. You're getting some of those announcements coming out now of who wins what awards. So working on that a little bit, and then I'm prepping for the regionals, because that's a pretty quick turnaround. It's Thursday. It's not Friday. They play Thursday, and that means there's practices on Wednesday. That means you're traveling Tuesday. So it arrives in a hurry. I feel like everyone, after North Dakota and Western Michigan lost, and some of these other teams, Providence, you're like, oh, there's this long layoff. It's like, it's going to be here before we even know it. You know, you'll be traveling Tuesday the next week, and yeah, so.
Well, I'm challenging you to watch every single this weekend, and here's why. Last Saturday, my wife and kids, they had a pre-planned trip. The girls are on spring break, so they went out of town. That day, I put my eyes on 14 different men's or women's games, either partial or complete games, over 5 different screens throughout the day. It was glorious. I'm very proud of that effort. I expect the same from you this weekend. I'm
looking forward to it. You know, love being at the rink on the weekend, but I also love being able to flip and watch a bunch of different games. Instead of rewatching them like I usually do during the week, I love watching them live. That's no replacement for that. So looking forward to that starting Friday. Big games, NCAA implications in a lot of them. So should be fun.
Should be fun, and I will remind our listeners that the Women's Frozen Four is this weekend. Semifinals on Friday, Ohio State against Northeastern, Wisconsin against Penn State. All of those games are on ESPN+. Sunday's championship will be on ESPNU. Please do check that out. That should be a great 3 games. Enjoy the hockey.